This week are going to cover something called decimal computation. Now, decimals we've talked a lot about so far this year, and the word computation is the same thing as calculation or finding the answer to. So we're going to be working on decimal problems, most likely adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, and we need to find the answer to the problem through some calculation or some computation. But before we do that, it's important that we are able to write out or say decimals correctly. Many times you will hear people say this as 0.43. Now, the problem is this is not actually 0.43 if we're saying it correctly. We know that for the decimal places, the first decimal place is the tenths place. The second decimal place is the hundredths place. Third decimal place is the thousandths place, and it can go on forever. So the next one would be 10 thousandths and so on. So this is the tenths place, hundredths place, thousandths place. And the reason why this is going to be really helpful is when we are converting to fractions to decimals and so on, especially when we're working with percentages later this year, it's really, really nice if the fraction and the decimal are said the same way. So for example, this first problem, which is 0.43, would be correctly said as 43 hundredths. Because it's in the second decimal place, which is also written as the fraction 43 hundredths. The next problem has a whole number in front, and so this time the decimal place is just going to be said with the word and. It's kind of like a mixed number. So this one would be 1 whole, or just 1, and our decimal is in the first place after the decimal place, which is the tenths place. So this would be 1 and 8 tenths. If we wanted to write it as a mixed number, we could write it then as 1 and 8 tenths, just like this. Now, the last problem is definitely the hardest one that we have on this page, but we still have the 32 and, so it's 32 wholes. And now the next part is definitely hardest. So this is the third decimal place, which is the thousandths place. So this would be 348 hundredths, which can be written as the mixed number of 32 and 348 hundredths. So there you go. We have the fraction form and the word form for these three decimals. For the next problem, we now have a story problem. First thing we have to do is we have to read it out loud to ourselves. So yesterday, Hunter made a total of $73.25. It's always important to underline the important information. If he made $82 today, how much did he make total? And I always like to circle the question so I know how to answer the question. How much did he make total? And in this case, total means addition. So we need to add the two numbers that we are given together. When we are adding decimals, we need to make sure the place value lines up. And in order for the place value to line up, that means the decimal place has to be in the same spot on each problem. But we don't have anything located after the decimal place on this bottom problem. So we can add zeros because 0 tenths or 0 hundredths does not change the place value of the problem we're working with. And now we just add the numbers together. And when we're working with decimals, the addition part of the problem ends up being the same as if the decimals were not there. So Hunter made a total of $155.25. And because we're in Mr. Schmidt's class, we have to write this as a sentence. So Hunter made a total of $155.25. And that's why it's important to always circle or underline the question, because when you write your sentence, it better include part of the question. How much did he make total? Hunter made this much total. You see how the question and the answer are very interconnected. So let's do another story problem. I started the day with 46 and a half cookies. Well, we're working with decimals, so this probably needs to be written as 46 and a half or 46 and 5/10. Then it says I used 32 and 3/4 of them later this afternoon. So use 32 and 3/4. Well, a quarter is 25 cents or 25 hundredths of a dollar. So 3/4 would be 75 cents or 75 hundredths of a dollar, giving us this number written as a decimal. How many cookies do I have left? So in this case, how many do I have left indicates subtraction. So we're going to do the larger number minus the smaller number. Once again, lining up our place values. But this time, we need to have that added 0 in the top number because 5/10 and 50 hundredths are the same. So when we subtract, we're definitely going to need to do some borrowing on this problem, which we have done a lot of. Whoop, I should be subtracting, not adding. There we go. So it looks like we have $13.75 left over. And once again, that's how we can say the sentence. I have, or not dollars, cookies in this case. I have 13 and 75 hundredths cookies left over. Alrighty, just 2 left. Every hour, the temperature increases by 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit, or 2 5/10 degrees Fahrenheit. At the beginning of the day, the temperature was at 10 degrees. 5 hours later, what temperature is it? So this one looks to be, we got a couple steps on this one. The first thing we have to do is figure out if the temperature goes up 2.5 degrees each hour, how much does it go up after 5 hours? So we could do addition. We could do 2 5/10 added 5 times, or we could multiply 2 5/10 times 5. And when we multiply numbers, what we do is we pretend the decimal place is not there, and we count the number of digits that were behind it total, which was 1 digit behind the decimal total. And now we multiply just like we would normally multiply. And then we reinsert the number of digits behind the decimal point, which means the decimal has to be here, or 12.5. So that means the temperature increased 12.5 degrees after 5 hours. And now we have to add our 10 degrees and our 12.5 degrees. Making sure to line up our decimal point. And so now, because we live in Maine, it's still very, very cold. It is 22.5 degrees now, or 5 hours later. There we go, 1 left. For our final problem, it says a construction company made a total of $440 today. There were 5 people working. If everyone made the same amount, that means that we're splitting it up evenly, how much would everyone have made? So that looks like splitting up evenly, looks like division to me. So we're going to do 440 divided by 5. If you make a mistake with division, it's because you almost always will write the numbers in reverse. So when you kind of write inside out, so it's 440 divided by 5. From here, I do my division just like I've always done it. And we're lucky because there is no remainder. which means that we do not have to write any decimals. So this problem was just a review of division for us. So everyone made $88. And there we go. All done with the example video. Like always, make sure you're doing one daily quest per day. If you have any questions, please let me know.